The forest was silent. Only the cold wind moved between the dark alien trees. The lost human sat near a small pile of wood, his hands shaking as he struck the stones together again and again. He had been walking for days, hungry, tired, and alone, with nothing but his memory of Earth to keep him alive. When the spark finally caught and the fire lit, his chest filled with relief, a little warmth against the endless night. He stared at the flames as if they were his only friend. The glow touched his face, showing the lines of struggle and fear. This world was not Earth, but every shadow reminded him of old stories told long ago, stories of monsters, of heroes, and of things hidden in the dark. He did not know if he was the last human alive or if someone would ever come to find him. But he knew one thing. Without fire, he would not survive the cold. The forest stretched wide and endless, with trees taller than towers, their leaves glowing faint green under the moon. Strange sounds echoed through the night, the cry of distant creatures, the beating of wings far above. The human pulled his old jacket tighter around his chest, listening, waiting, praying that nothing dangerous had seen the light of his fire. He had learned one rule in this world. If the fire gave warmth, it also gave him away. Still, he could not live without it, so he stayed, staring into the fire, until his heavy eyes began to close. But then, a sound came, soft, sharp, like claws scratching against stone. His heart jumped, and he turned quickly, his hand holding a broken stick, the only weapon he had. The firelight flickered, and in that glow, he saw movement between the roots of the trees. Something small was hiding, watching him, glowing eyes peeking from the dark. He held his breath, waiting for an attack, but nothing came, only the sound of slow steps. Then, from the shadows, a creature crawled forward, its scales shining faintly under the fire, its wings folded close to its body. The human could not believe what he saw. It looked like a dragon, not the mighty ones from legend, but a small, fragile baby dragon. The little creature's body trembled, its tiny claws scratched the ground as it moved closer to the fire. It did not roar, it did not strike, it only shivered like a lost child. The human lowered his stick, unsure if he was dreaming, his eyes wide in shock. The dragonling gave a weak cry, then stepped closer, curling its small body toward the heat of the fire. Slowly, as if trusting him, the baby dragon climbed onto his lap, its scales cold against his skin. The human froze, every muscle tense, afraid that moving even a little might scare the creature away. He looked at its eyes, glowing golden, and for a moment, he forgot his fear. The dragon closed its eyes, curling tightly against him, breathing slow and weak, as if he was the safest place in the world. He could feel its heartbeat, light and fragile, and something deep inside him stirred, a strange mix of awe and wonder. He had been alone for so long, but now, in this endless wilderness, something had chosen to trust him. The fire crackled, throwing sparks into the air, and the forest remained silent, as if holding its breath. The human whispered softly, words that no one else would hear. "You are not my enemy, are you?" The baby dragon only sighed, pressing itself closer into his arms, searching for warmth. And in that moment, the lost human felt something he had almost forgotten, hope. The forest was still full of danger, and tomorrow would bring hunger, cold, and fear once again. But tonight, under the alien sky, by the fire he had lit, he was no longer completely alone. Somewhere deep in the woods, a roar echoed, powerful and angry, shaking the ground beneath him. The baby dragon stirred, but did not leave his lap. It stayed with him, clinging tighter. The human's eyes widened, his heart raced. He now understood. If there was a baby dragon here, then its parent must be near, and the night was far from over. The night grew colder. The fire's glow danced weakly in the dark, but the human barely felt it now. The baby dragon lay curled in his lap, its scales rough yet strangely delicate, and every small breath it took was like a whisper from another world. The human could not understand why this creature, born of fire and fury, had chosen him, a lost man with nothing but ashes in his hands. But deep inside, he felt something had changed. A bond was forming, fragile but real. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the last piece of dried food he had saved, a strip of meat, tough and tasteless. The dragonling's golden eyes opened, glowing faintly as it sniffed the air, its small tongue flickering like a spark. The human held the food forward slowly, his hand trembling, unsure if the creature would bite him or trust him. The dragon hesitated, then took the meat gently, chewing weakly before swallowing, its wings twitching with the effort. A strange warmth filled the human's chest. He had given away the last food he owned, but instead of regret, he felt lighter. The dragon licked its lips, then pressed its small head against his chest, a soft vibration rolling from its throat, like the purr of an animal. The sound surprised him, for it was not the growl of a predator but the comfort of a companion. And then it happened. A sudden flash behind his eyes. For a heartbeat the world shifted. He saw images not his own, skies filled with fire, wings cutting through clouds, a nest glowing red in the mountains. The vision struck him so hard he almost dropped the creature, clutching his head as the images burned bright and then vanished. He gasped, looking down at the baby dragon, which only blinked at him as if nothing strange had. It happened. The human understood. Somehow their minds had touched. It was not just an animal, it was more. It carried memories, power, and a history older than human words, and it had shared a piece of itself with him. The thought filled him with wonder, but also fear. Because if a small dragon could do this, what would its parents be like? The fire cracked louder, and the human's body stiffened. From far away, beyond the trees, came another sound, a deep, thunderous roar. It rolled through the forest like a storm, shaking the leaves, echoing across the night. The dragonling stirred nervously, pressing deeper into his lap, its claws gripping his jacket tight. The human's heart pounded, his throat dry. He looked into the forest but saw only shadows moving between the massive trunks. He knew that sound, even if he had never heard it before. It was a mother's cry, full of fury and pain. The baby dragon answered with a soft whimper, as if calling back. But the human quickly hushed it. His hands shook as he pulled the creature closer, realizing what danger he had invited. If the mother found them, there would be no fire big enough, no weapon sharp enough, no cave deep enough to protect him. He looked at the baby in his arms, so small, so helpless, and a terrible choice burned inside him. Should he let it go, push it back into the forest so its mother could find it, or hold on and risk facing the wrath of a monster that could end him in seconds? The baby dragon nuzzled closer, as if sensing his fear, trusting him with blind innocence. The roar came again, louder, closer, shaking the ground beneath his feet. The fire trembled as sparks shot into the air, the shadows of the trees bending like giants across the forest floor. The human's breath caught in his chest, sweat rolled down his temple. Though the air was freezing, he whispered to himself, a voice cracked with fear. "What have I done?" The dragon's golden eyes met his, and for a moment something silent passed between them. The bond was not just warmth, it was fate. And though the night was still, he knew the forest was no longer empty. The mother was coming, and there would be no escape. The fire burned low, its glow weak against the endless shadows. Yet in the arms of the human, the baby dragon slept as if the world outside did not exist. He sat still, his back pressed against the trunk of a massive tree, his ears straining at every crack of the forest. The roar he had heard earlier still echoed in his chest, heavy and alive, reminding him that a creature far greater than anything he could imagine was searching. And if that creature found him, his fire, and the dragonling in his lap, the night would not end with warmth, it would end with fire and death. The man looked down at the tiny beast, its golden eyes now closed, its chest rising and falling in rhythm, its warmth seeping into him. He had been cold for days, starving, tired, and lost. But with the small body pressed against him, he felt something he had not felt since Earth, a reason to keep going. The thought frightened him more than the roar, because to care in this world was dangerous. It made him slower, weaker, more human. Yet no matter how much he told himself to put the creature down and let it return to its kind, he could not. The bond had already chained his heart. Then it came again, not sound this time, but sight. His mind was struck with another flash of vision, sudden and wild. He saw flames roaring in the sky. He saw shadows of wings across the mountains. He saw nests carved into stone glowing with lava. The images were not his memories. They were older, deeper, belonging to the baby dragon. His hands shook as he held the creature, realizing what it had given him. A piece of its world, a link between human and dragon that went beyond touch. The vision ended, leaving his mind spinning, his breath short, his eyes wide. The forest was real again. The fire was Al and the dragonling shifted softly in his arms, murmuring a sound like a purr. The human whispered, his voice low and filled with awe. "You can show me what you see." The baby dragon only pressed closer, as if answering without words. But the peace was broken. A scream tore through the silence, high-pitched and sharp. Not the roar of a dragon, but the cry of some other predator of the wild. The man's head snapped to the left, his eyes scanning the dark. From between the glowing trees came figures, low and fast, their bodies hunched, their skin glimmering wet under the alien moon. The creatures moved in a pack, 6, maybe 7 of them, their eyes shining silver, their mouths filled with jagged teeth that dripped as they growled. The human felt his stomach twist in fear. These were hunters drawn by the scent of his fire. He had no blade, no gun, only a stick and a flame. And the baby dragon in his arms stirred, lifting its head, its golden eyes burning brighter as if sensing the danger. The pack spread around the fire, their steps slow, their growls deep, circling him like wolves on earth. The human's breath came heavy, his heart racing, sweat dripping down his face. He pushed the baby dragon gently behind him, his hand reaching for a burning branch, lifting it like a torch. The firelight reflected in the predator's eyes, and for a moment they hesitated, snarling but not yet leaping. The human shouted, his voice raw, swinging the flaming branch, sparks flying through the night. The creatures hissed and snapped, testing him, their claws digging into the dirt. And then one lunged, a blur of silver and teeth. The man swung hard, the branch smashing into its face, flames licking its skin. The beast shrieked and tumbled back into the dark, but the others did not retreat. They growled louder, angrier, circling closer. The human's arms shook with the weight of the burning wood, his legs trembling, his chest screaming for air. And then, before he could swing again, the baby dragon stepped forward, its small body trembling, but its eyes fierce. It opened its mouth. The ground trembled before the sound reached him, a deep rumble that rolled through the roots of the trees and shook the fire's fragile glow. The human froze, clutching the baby dragon to his chest, his breath trapped inside his throat. The roar came again, louder this time, a sound so powerful it bent the air and rattled the bones in his chest. It was not just anger. It was a mother's fury, a call that promised death to whoever had dared take her child. The firelight flickered weakly against the trunks, and the forest seemed to bow in silence, as if every creature, every predator, every hunter knew to hide. But there was nowhere for him to run, nowhere deep enough to bury himself from the storm that was about to descend. The baby dragon whimpered softly, its golden eyes wide, its tiny claws digging into his jacket. The human whispered to it, his voice shaking, "Stay quiet, please stay quiet." Though he knew silence would not save him. Then the night tore open. A shadow fell across the trees, enormous wings spread wide, blocking out the moonlight. The sound of beating air was like thunder, each wing stroke pulling the breath from his chest. And then she landed, the ground splitting beneath her claws, the fire shrinking under her shadow. The mother dragon was vast, her scales black as iron, her chest glowing faint red with heat, her eyes burning with molten gold. Smoke poured from her nostrils. Every breath she took shook the forest. Her tail lashed the ground, carving trenches into the dirt. She turned her head slowly, her gaze sweeping over the fire. And when her eyes found the human, the world seemed to stop. Her roar split the night, a wave of sound and fury so strong he dropped to his knees, clutching the baby against his chest. The flames bent under the force of her cry, sparks rising high as if the fire itself was afraid. The human's ears rang, his chest burr. Ned, his vision blurred, but he did not let go of the baby dragon. The mother stepped closer, each claw sinking deep into the earth, her wings folding, her head lowering. The heat from her breath washed over him, searing his skin, his eyes watering, his hands trembling but refusing to release the small creature in his arms. The baby dragon cried out, not in fear but in longing, a soft call that cut through the roar. The mother froze, her molten eyes flickering with confusion. The human lowered his head, bowing without words, his body shaking, his voice whispering, "I mean no harm, I swear." He placed the baby carefully on the ground between them, his heart breaking even as his instincts screamed to hold on. The baby dragon stepped forward unsteadily, its small wings fluttering, its eyes bright with recognition. The mother's massive head lowered further, smoke swirling around her jaws, her teeth glinting in the firelight. For a terrible moment, the human thought she would burn him alive where he knelt. A single breath enough to erase him. but the baby pressed its body against his leg, refusing to leave him completely. The mother roared again, this time lower, deeper, a sound that shook the forest, but carried something new, a question, a warning. The man raised his head slowly, meeting her gaze though every part of him screamed to look away. His chest heaved, his hands empty now, his voice cracked as he spoke. I saved your child, not stole it. I am only alive because of it. The mother's eyes narrowed, the glow inside her chest pulsing, as if deciding whether his words meant life or death. The forest held its breath, the fire hissed low, the baby dragon whimpered softly, torn between mother and man, and in that fragile silence, the human understood. His fate was no longer his own. It rested in the claws of a creature older and stronger than anything mankind had ever faced. One wrong move, one wrong breath, and he would be nothing but ash on the ground. But still, he did not run, he did not fight, he only knelt, waiting for the judgment of the mother dragon. The mother dragon's golden eyes glowed like molten suns, locked on the fragile figure of the human. Smoke swirled from her nostrils, the air heavy with heat and the scent of ash. The baby dragon pressed against the man's leg, torn between the warmth of his arms and the call of its mother. The human knelt in the dirt, his body trembling, yet his hands were steady, open, showing he carried no weapon. His voice was low, cracked but steady. I did not take your child. I only kept it warm. I only fed it. I only lived because of it. The mother hissed, her massive head lowering until her eyes were level with his, the glow in her throat brightening as fire built within. The man's skin burned under her breath, sweat pouring down his face, his chest heaving with fear, yet he did not move away. He knew that if he ran, she would burn the forest itself to ash to stop him, and if he fought, he would die before he raised his hand. The baby dragon cried again, a soft call, its small wings fluttering as it pressed harder against him. The sound broke the silence, cutting through the heat of her fury, and for the first time, the mother hesitated. Her chest still glowed, her claws still dug into the earth, but her head tilted, her eyes shifting between her child and the strange creature who dared to protect it. The human swallowed hard, his heart pounding like thunder, and then, slowly, painfully, he rose to his feet. Every muscle in his body screamed with fear, but he forced himself upright, standing before the mother dragon. Though he was barely taller than her claw, the fire behind him flickered weakly, casting his shadow against her scales. His voice broke as he whispered, "If you must take me, then take me, but let the child live." The baby dragon gave a sharp cry as if refusing his words, clinging tighter to his leg, its golden eyes blazing bright. The mother dragon stepped forward, roared, the ground shaking with each move. Her head loomed above him, her jaws opening, the heat of her fire pouring out. The man raised his arms slowly, lifting the baby dragon high, placing it on the ground between them. The small creature stood unsteady, looking up at its mother, then back at the human, torn by the bond between blood and trust. For a long, terrible moment, nothing moved. The human's knees shook, his vision blurred from the heat, his breath shallow, his mind screaming for escape. But he stayed, still and silent, his eyes never leaving hers. It was no longer a fight, it was a question of faith, a test of trust, a moment where one mother's fury and one human's courage hung in balance. The baby dragon stepped closer to him instead of its mother, curling back against his leg, and the world seemed to stop. The mother's roar shattered the silence, the trees bending under its power, the fire nearly dying from the force. The man braced for the end, his arms shielding the small creature, his heart screaming with one final thought. If this is death, at least he did not die alone. But the flames never came. Instead, the massive head lowered, so close he could see the cracks in her scales. Her golden eyes burned into him, searching, judging, weighing every breath he took. The baby dragon chirped, a soft, fragile sound, and pressed its small head against his hand. The mother inhaled deeply, the glow in her throat fading, the smoke thinning from her breath. Her roar turned into a rumble, low, deep, like distant thunder rolling across mountains. It was not fury now, it was warning, a reminder that she could destroy him in a single moment, but she would not. The man fell to his knees, tears filling his eyes, his chest heaving with relief, his body trembling so hard he could barely hold himself up. The mother dragon pulled back slowly, her wings stretching wide, her shadow swallowing the firelight, but she did not strike. The test was over, and though he did not understand why, he had passed. The baby dragon curled against him again, and this time the mother did not stop it. The human closed his eyes, whispering, "Thank you," though he knew she could not understand his words. But maybe, just maybe, she understood something deeper, something that went beyond language. The days that followed were not filled with peace, but with a strange balance. The human stayed near the edge of the great forest, never wandering too far from the cave he had found. The baby dragon, though still small, grew stronger with each sunrise, its wings stretching wider, its eyes glowing brighter. Where once it had trembled in his arms, now it ran, leapt, and even tried to fly, its small body tumbling in the grass with clumsy courage. The human hunted carefully, gathering what little he could from the alien land. He shared everything with the dragonling, even when hunger tore at his stomach, and the creature answered his sacrifice with trust. It would follow him everywhere, curling beside him at night, sparking small flames when the firewood grew wet. For the first time since he was lost, the man did not fear the night, for he was no longer alone, but the forest never forgot. Predators lurked in the shadows, drawn by the smell of smoke, the sound of wings, and the bond of warmth between human and beast. Once, while searching for water, they were attacked by scaled creatures with spines like blades, their screeches sharp enough to split stone. The human fought with nothing but a sharpened stick and fire, but when he fell, the baby dragon rose. It opened its small jaws, and for the first time, true flame poured out. The blast was weak but bright, enough to scatter the attackers and light the ground with fire. The man stared in shock, his heart pounding, for he had seen not just an animal but a weapon of legend. He touched its head gently, whispering, "You are more than I thought, Aoi." And the dragon only pressed closer, its golden eyes burning with pride. But word travels fast in the wilderness, even when carried on the cries of beasts and the smoke of fire. Others had noticed not only the predators but the watchers of the sky. One night, as the man gathered branches, he saw lights above the trees, ships gliding silently, their shadows cold against the stars. His blood froze, for he knew what they were: alien hunters, raiders who searched for rare beasts to cage and sell across the galaxy. The baby dragon growled, its wings half spread, sensing the danger before he even spoke. The man grabbed it close, hiding under the roots of an ancient tree as the ships passed overhead, their searchlights cutting the forest in bright beams. He whispered fiercely, "Stay still, don't move." But the dragon's small body trembled, sparks slipping from its throat. The light swept close, the sound of engines rumbling, and for a moment the man thought they were discovered. But the ships moved on, the sound fading into the distance, leaving only silence and the pounding of his heart. He knew then that it was not only beasts of the forest he had to fear, but men, aliens, and hunters who would kill him for food and take the dragon for gold. He looked down at the baby creature, which gazed back with trust and fire in its eyes, and he swore quietly, "I will not let them take you, never." The bond grew stronger. Together they hunted, they fought, they survived. The dragon began to leap higher, its wings catching the air for longer moments, until one day it lifted for a breath of time, hovering before crashing down into the grass. The man laughed, for it was the sound of hope, and the dragon roared in its small way, a voice that promised it would one day rule the sky. But the forest whispered with new dangers. The alien hunters would return, stronger, armed, and ready. Predators of the wild grew bolder, drawn by the fire and the strange pair that walked the land. And above all, the shadow of the mother dragon lingered, for though she had spared him, she had not accepted him fully, her eyes always watching from afar. The man knew that the bond he shared with the baby dragon was no longer a secret. It was a spark in the wilderness, one that would either burn the galaxy or be crushed before it could shine. And when the night came and the fire burned low, he looked into the baby's golden eyes and whispered, "If we must fight, then we fight together." The dragon pressed close, its chest glowing faint with fire, and in the silence, a storm gathered on the horizon. The night was not quiet anymore. Far above the trees, the sound of engines roared, alien ships cutting across the sky like silver knives. The human stood at the edge of the forest, his heart heavy, his hand resting gently on the baby dragon's back. He had felt this moment coming. The silence of the last days had been too sharp, too waiting, too full of unseen eyes. The hunters had returned, not searching this time but attacking. Bright beams of light poured through the branches, explosions shook the ground, and the smell of burning wood filled the air. Creatures fled in terror, their cries echoing as fire spread across the forest. The man pulled the baby dragon close, whispering, "Stay with me, no matter what happens." Figures dropped from the sky, armored and armed, their weapons glowing with alien fire. They moved in lines, efficient, cold, their helmets shining, their voices sharp as they shouted orders. They were not here for him, not at first. They were here for the dragon, a creature so rare and powerful it would make them rich beyond measure. But the moment they saw him standing beside it, they marked him too. The human's chest pounded, his body weak from hunger, his hands empty of weapons, but his eyes burned with something stronger than fear, the baby dragon stood beside him, its wings trembling, its throat glowing faintly, ready to spit flame even if it meant burning itself empty. The hunters raised their weapons, their leader shouting in a tongue the man did not know. And then the first shot came, tearing through the trees. The man dove aside, pulling the baby close, fire exploding against the ground where he had stood. Sparks filled the air, the forest lit with destruction. He grabbed a burning branch, the same tool that had saved him before, and swung it desperately, holding the line as the hunters closed in. The baby dragon leapt forward, its eyes blazing, and fire burst from its throat, stronger now, brighter, spraying across the attackers. They screamed, their armor glowing red under the heat, their lines breaking, their shouts turning to panic. The human stood tall, shouting with all his strength, his voice echoing with defiance. "You will not take us." But even as the flames scattered the hunters, more ships descended, their shadows blotting out the stars. There were too many, too strong, too prepared, and for a moment, he thought this was the end. Then the forest shook again. A roar cut through the chaos, deeper and louder than the sound of ships. The ground split as an enormous shadow fell across the battlefield, wings wider than houses, eyes brighter than suns. The mother dragon had come, her fury shaking the night. She descended with fire and smoke, her breath turning the sky red, her claws tearing through ships as if they were made of paper. The hunters screamed, scattering, their weapons useless against the storm she brought. The humans stood frozen, watching in awe as the air burned with her wrath. And in the middle of it all, the baby dragon raised its head and roared, a small but fierce echo of its mother's cry. The man felt his chest swell, his fear gone, replaced with something greater. For the first time since Earth was lost to him, he felt he belonged to something bigger than himself. He fought with fire in his hand, the dragon fought with fire in its chest, and the mother burned the sky itself. Together, they turned the hunters' invasion into ashes. When the last ship fell, when the last cry faded, the forest stood scarred but alive. The human dropped to his knees, his body weak, his breath shallow, but his heart alive. The baby dragon crawled into his arms once more, curling tightly, its golden eyes soft with trust. The mother landed before him, her vast wings folding, her gaze burning into his soul. He lowered his head, waiting for her judgment, but she did not strike. Instead, she rumbled low, her roar like thunder rolling across mountains. It was not fury now, it was recognition, perhaps even respect, for in that moment she saw not a thief, not a stranger, but an ally who had stood with her child against the galaxy. The human lifted his head slowly, his voice whispering, "I am not lost anymore." The baby dragon purred softly, its fire dim but warm, curling into his chest. The mother spread her wings, raising her head high, and the night sky glowed with embers of her fire. And so, in the ruins of battle, a legend was born, the story of a lost human who lit a fire in the wild and found a dragon in his arms.